and this would be potentially the either continued fighting or a third assault on the city in the same day. Walter, does that jive with what you understand, or Patrick?
So essentially, they're trying to seize the Vasilkiv southwest of Kiev, right? Uh, Let me check. I don't see any. Haven't seen any reports yet in regards to that. And that was this Illusion 76 was downed above Vasilkiv, right? If I'm not mistaken.
I'm sorry, Walter, you're breaking up for me. I don't know if other people can hear you well, but I it's just breaking up for me.
Oh, let me fix this 1 second.
Hey, Peter, do we know if that's an air assault or is it an airborne operation?
They are saying that there's heavy fighting reporting. Russian paratroopers reportedly landed in the city. Ukrainian forces are fighting them. I'm also seeing within the past 5 minutes that Nexta is reporting that the sorry, I'm going to butcher this, but Berezhskaya metro station is under assault, that there's explosions in the area around it. So either that those are just explosions by some sort of strike, or that there is an attack going on actively there.
I also just put up in a nest from Ilya Ponomarenko. He says a Russian drone was down in Mariupol. So something to pay attention to there. Seems like they're trying to get a little more reconnaissance, considering the fact that we've seen a very terrible intel push.
And then also in the news in the last hour, Kazakhstan has denied that it's denying a request for its troops to join the offensive in Kiev, in Ukraine, I should say. So apparently they've been asked by Russia, or there was rumors that they were asked by Russia, and they said, nope, not sending troops.
You fucking go, Kazakhstan.
Furthermore, Kazakhstan is declaring that it is not recognizing the Russian-created breakaway republics. So they're not recognizing the Luhansk People's Republic, the so-called Luhansk People's Republic, nor the Donetsk People's Republic.
All right, that's pretty ballsy of them. Especially, didn't the peacekeepers go in there during their protests recently too?
Yes, that is the thing, is that just recently there was a lot of domestic like riots and protests
Turmoil,
against
yeah.
the Kazakh government, and Russia went in with peacekeepers to help the Kazakh government. And here it is, just I think that's less than a month ago, and Kazakhstan is like, you might have helped us, but we want no part of what you're doing now.
That's impressive. Well, yeah, that's powerful for them to just be like, yeah, no, you're on your own with this shit. I also saw China's state banks are not allowing. Can't remember if they put a limit on it or they're not allowing any like Russian investment or something like that. I was like, huh. They just kind of quietly put limits on their state banks, apparently.
Right. Okay, so if anybody can confirm any of this fighting again in Vasilkiv to the southwest, there's also reports of clashes at the CHP6 power plant, which is to the northeast, so the opposite side of the city, or at that metro station, Beretsetsky. Sorry about that. I'll learn how to pronounce that before the next time I attempt it. But the Kiev metro station.
I did hear about by the power station that's still going on, or at least last I heard about it. I heard off to the west, they've been pretty successful in pushing them back. I think that's all I've heard about Kiev recently.
So you're saying that near Bucha and Vyshgorod, all this Russian advancement was pushed back?
Yeah, I think
The
it was. I
Go
can't
ahead.
remember it exactly.
Yeah, I'm
But
trying to figure out what's going on as well. It's conflicting reports.
one second, let me check on something because I just saw something on one of these cameras. Make sure they're not pushing
Okay,
back.
I'm getting local confirmation of both those clashes at the metro station and at by the paratroopers to the southeast.
So that secondary drop was confirmed?
Yep.
They just don't learn.
Yeah, and again, this is something that we were talking about even before the conflict broke out. We were saying that if you are going to try and make a drop into rear echelons, you want to do it in such a way that you can be easily met up with by your reinforcements, whether armor or advancing infantry. And the problem with these Russian drops is that they keep on dropping to these isolated areas, and eventually they're apparently, their small arms munitions run out, or the unit just breaks, and they've been bagged, as POWs, or they've been, pretty much wiped out effectively as fighting forces. Few survivors have been known to run into the forest, but this is very much frittering away. They're not being done in these massed things where they could take and hold an area. It's very piecemeal, and it just flies in the face of any doctrine we've ever heard of.
Yeah, we're seeing these company and battalion sized drops, probably platoons in the case of some of the Spetsnaz units. But yeah, that's exactly right. They're not being dropped in enough strength to hold these positions that are so far behind Russian lines.
So essentially, it's connected to the previous report that I mentioned. The checkpoint was approached by saboteurs, Russian saboteurs, dressed up as Ukrainian police in a police vehicle with the police lights on. And as they approached, eventually they managed to close in, jump them, and kill everyone on the checkpoint. And then what followed was more Russian units in trucks. Essentially, this helped them initially, and apparently after that they tried to drop some more airborne units. So now it's being fought for.
I pinned a tweet up in the nest. If anybody has any contact info for foreign vets, looking to join in on the fighting or to support Ukraine, please DM me the information. I'm trying to verify that all the information is correct as yeah, thanks.
One of our viewers asked, does anyone have any updates in Mykolaiv? It sounds like there's heavy airstrikes, and since Kherson fell, it may be the next target.
Also, really quickly, I want to point out Ilya Ponomarenko has posted a video of extremely hard combat near the Kiev Zoo right now.
Okay, so I was just checking out the map on that one. So that would be along an axis of the Paramohi Avenue, which would be running from a park. There's an amusement park which is close to that metro station I was talking about, the Berestiska metro station, which we were said to be under attack. And then this would be further to the east if you're saying that it's near the zoo. So it'd be along that same avenue. So, and then this would be on an axis coming pretty much from the direct west of the city towards Kiev center. So again, if they've reached as far as the zoo, if it's further out, if it's towards the amusement park slash metro station, then it's still a decent, much further distance from the city center. So thank you for that. And if anybody has corroborating evidence, again, you can just share that and tag me publicly, Peter Corliss. Thank you. And again, to all the Ukrainians out there, I apologize for my mispronunciation of your names. Okay, does anybody else have eyes on any of these conflicts here? And until they do, again, I just want to level set the room here. We're looking for open source information. Um, so please make sure to not just DM this to me. Put this, if it's especially if it's a public tweet, I'm seeing a lot of these. Don't just share it to my private DMs, share it publicly, and then just tag me. That would be the best way of doing it. But yes, we are seeing some pretty heavy explosions at the subway. So thanks for sharing those. But again, don't just share these privately, share these to my public Twitter so that other people can see this also. Thank you.
So either somebody has a very melodious like car alarm in Kiev, or people are singing. And by the way, I do not have eyes on any of the battles, but I can hear it. I can hear some artillery. And
Yeah,
I'm
and
pretty sure they're singing.
now it has been common so far, I've seen, to sing the national anthem during firefights and other clashes. We've
Yeah,
seen this in Kharkiv and elsewhere that this is, the spontaneous song, probably the Ukrainian national anthem.
that's
So
yeah, like it was very much a something you do in the heat of battle type of thing. I don't know how to describe it. It was kind of, it gave me chills, honestly.
And yeah, live UA map has is confirming that there is now conflict in the area of the zoo, which is again a decent distance from that metro station. So let me find out the distance there that would present as an advance.
Breaking news reports that signals are being given across Kiev city by Russian saboteurs. It seems they're using some kind of lights.
Yeah, I see that violet lights are blinking or flashing in some of the houses, and some suspicious individuals, males, are walking around with white bands.
Okay, so just to give people an example of the distance here, from that metro station where the fighting was described earlier, uh, to the zoo is about 3 kilometers. So that would represent a pretty significant advance. What we can't tell is whether that means that that entire area has been cleared of defenders, or whether just some unit has broken through, maybe some isolated fighting. So, and again, the other thing that we're not going to do is we're not going to reveal the position of any defenders per se. But just know that these are the reports that are coming in. We will try and give you honest information as best as we can. The other thing, again, is that I'll be citing sources. If people are sharing information to me, please cite your source when you do share it. Don't just say, I heard, because we can't pass along hearsay.
Peter, it's highly likely that's either a breakthrough element or the Ukrainians have withdrawn from the area to prevent encirclement. You don't clear 3 clicks of urban center in that short amount of time. Not if it's occupied by hostile forces.
Facts.
About those lights I mentioned, I just found a video where there's someone at the rooftop, and he's clearly signaling.
Another report unconfirmed so far of another IL-76 eliminated over Bila Zerkva, Kiev region.
Yeah,
that might be what I heard in the background. I almost thought it was because it sounded surface to air. It didn't sound like I heard a jet, and then it sounded like the jet had released missiles. But I think I was hearing it kind of the missiles were going up to the jet.
Let's hear it for Ukrainian SAMs.
Mm-hmm. Now this is known as the White Church in Kiev. So this church was founded about 1,000 years ago in 1032, just to give you an example of how old it is.
So something going on in Sofia Kievska, or what's going on?
Walter, do you ask if something's going on? Yes, we're seeing infantry advances towards the city center of Kiev, and an IL-76 was just reported shot down by the Bila Cerkva.
Well, at least they shut down another IL-76. It's good.
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing Walter. So did he say anything?
No, I'm still here. I'm trying to assess what's going on as well. Just glued to
All
the
right,
screen.
fair enough. Now, from what I'm seeing, the Bila Cerkva is much further to the south, though. Not in the city center, though, is it?
Bila Tserkva is a separate city, of course. It's let me check how far from Kiev it is. It's like 50 clicks away, I think. Probably less, more like 30 kilometers southwest. But Vasilkiv, so they're trying Vasilkiv and Bila Tserkva. At least those, right?
So, and sorry, Walter. the one thing I want to mention is that even though we've talked about a lot of the tactical and operational errors that we've seen from Russia, this is definitely not a battle that's been decided one way or the other at all. Again, we were saying that yesterday Russia had only at that time committed one third of its force. Um, if if it continues to commit additional forces, if it hardens up, we're starting to see again, these are forces that are getting pretty close to the downtown area of Kiev. And so again, I just want to make sure that people keep an open mind. They don't think that this game is won one way or the other, and just again to keep um, this is not a game. This is not a football contest. These are real people's lives at stake. So just be very sober about what you're sharing.
Yes, and this is their home.
So, as I said, saboteurs are putting up signs on roofs and streets for Russian air and land forces. Apparently, Ukrainian army has asked people to destroy the signs.
Okay, so
Okay,
to
so
again, go ahead.
I see more and more reports about Il-76 downed above Bila or near Bila Tserkva.
Yeah, and that would either be the second IL-76 down tonight or a re-report of that earlier downing. But it seems like that's a second one. So again, each one of these IL-76s carries the equivalent of a company worth of troops, or maybe a platoon or a company. But that's a significant force to lose every time one of those goes down.
Yeah, and I wasn't gonna say anything at first, but I heard what could have been that. Because I thought maybe it was just somebody seeing it for the first time too, but they put a specific place, and then I had heard what sounded like jet engines, and then surface to air.
Yeah, well, the assumption is that it's carrying cargo and hasn't already discharged or en route, completing its sortie going back to base.
Correct, that this was inbound as opposed to outbound. Right. If it was outbound and empty, then there was at least an air crew killed, but no troops. They may have already disembarked.
It's like
Okay, so I see reports that there were two Il-76, and one of them actually managed to drop the airborne units, and the other one was downed. But it's still unconfirmed.
Somebody's getting a mustard stain.
I wonder if the one of them was able to hit close enough to where he dropped that it fell on them.
Yeah, and what helped them significantly was this saboteur move with national police, with Russians dressed up as national police.
Okay, so again, according to these reports, according to the video we're seeing and sharing, There is fighting that is coming in from the western side of Kiev. There is also reports of fighting to the southwest outside of the city. And then there's also fighting to the northeast by the power station. So the city is being hemmed in at least from three sides, from the northeast, the northwest, and the true west. But we haven't seen attacks on any other parts of the city yet. So, the city is not yet surrounded, but that would be a very concerning thing if it was.
Also, I forgot after hearing that on the camera and stuff, but I recently saw that not Congress yet, maybe Congress. Anyway, apparently the U.S. is working on sending $6.3 billion of, I'm not sure if it's exactly what it is, but help to Ukraine.
Okay, I see Wolverines 84 is trying to get back in, so I'm going to try and give him a second invite up to the stage here.
You can punch me out. I'm gonna go take a break and do something else.
And again, if anybody in the audience feels that they need to take a break, feel free to, run your feet on the carpet, pet the cat, hug the kids, and have some dinner wherever you are. And also protocol for other folks that are trying to ask to speak. What would really help us is if when you DM us about asking to speak, you let Patrick or myself know the topic that you want to speak on, be as specific as possible. Introduce whatever experience that may be relevant when you do it. And if you just need to ask a question, just ask the question directly in the DMs, and then we'll read it aloud for the panel here. Again, we just have so many people listening. We can't let everybody up to the stage, but we do want to see if we can get answers to any concerns that you have. So thank you for your patience.
One of our listeners asked a question or a theory, and he says that maybe the building and street markings are basically waypoints to safe houses for the saboteurs.
It's like, well, that's a theory. Maybe they are just a waypoint of sorts.
So again, we can attempt to speculate on things, but we try not to. We're trying not to create any sort of rumor mills ourselves. So if people have speculation like that, that's one thing, but we try not to pass along hearsay. If you have evidence of it, like for instance, I know that there have been accusations that there have been signals sent from some buildings. If there's a correlation to potentially one of these buildings being a place that was signaled from, and then fighting breaks out at that building, like as if a strike force is going in to take out the signalers, that would be something that you could corroborate. If there's no corroboration, if this is just idle speculation, we're trying to tamp down on that kind of stuff. So, again, just be very conscientious of, starting rumors in a war zone.
Yeah, it's like multiple coordinated attacks being reported in the western side of Kiev.
Oh, yikes. I just want to let you know that that guy I brought in before Chris, who asked the question, he he was not very appreciative. He just says we are rude Americans. So again, if there's anybody we're not able to get to, we're trying to do our best. But I myself was blocked out of this space for about a half an hour due to technical reasons. We're trying to get to everybody. We're not trying to be rude. So again, please bear with us as we try and get to everybody.
So
I did.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Carry on. I'll finish afterwards.
Oh no, this is just someone sent me a DM. Says hi. I'm seeing a lot of messaging condemning the U.S. and other nations for a lack of action against Russia. For the largely uninformed, can you briefly talk through the risk or downsides of countries taking more aggressive and or decisive actions? So of course, avoid speculation, but I do think that's something that people are kind of wondering at this point.
Well, I mean, I've written on this extensively at this point. A lot of the options for assisting Ukraine have already passed the West by. We are on a time crunch. There is a clock on this now. There are a few things we could be doing. We could be pushing these ex-Soviet equipment supplies that are in Eastern Flank Warsaw, ex-Warsaw Pact NATO members into Ukraine, and we wouldn't even necessarily have to put them into Ukraine. If Ukraine wanted to rotate some of its troops as a rest area in NATO countries, equip them, and then send them back over the border, that would be possible. It would be risky. Russia would have a cow over it. We could be refueling and rearming Ukrainian planes at nearby NATO air bases in Romania and Poland. Again, Russia would have a hissy fit over it, but what are they going to do? Risk nuclear war? No. The nuclear card has two sides to it, and I think the West has largely forgotten that. We should be inviting the Ukrainian military to transport its wounded into NATO hospitals in order to free up their battlefield medicine capacity. We can provide a lot of capability and intelligence to them. I think we are doing some of that from just basic assumption there. And the U.S. has previously said that it would, so I'm going off that as well. We, in theory, and this would probably be about the most aggressive thing I could even conceive of NATO doing, and I honestly don't think we'll see it. You could put NATO contractors in there. And this is on the order of the Flying Tigers who assisted the nationalist Chinese against the Japanese during the Second World War. It's like the Russians used to fly North Korean MiGs against UN troops during the Korean War because the North Koreans lacked pilots. The Russians also manned North Vietnamese air defense batteries against the Americans and our allies in Vietnam, again, because the North Vietnamese lacked the technical specialists to do it. It was completely deniable. The USSR never admitted they did it, and in the case of the Americans in the Sino-Chinese War, they officially cut ties with our government before they did it, and that would be the way to do it this time. Officially, you have NATO pilots or even ground personnel. Officially, they are paid mercenaries by Kiev, and that would be the way to do it. It would be highly provocative. I would expect some kind of response from Russia from that. Probably not direct, probably cyber or something non-military in nature. But if you really want to provide significant help to the Ukrainians at this late stage, it's going to have to be something that entails a certain level of risk to NATO.
Right. And the other thing, I'm going to follow up with this because I got a question here from one of our listeners. I'm seeing a lot of messaging condemning the US and other nations for lack of action against Russia. For the largely uninformed, can you briefly talk through the risks or downsides of countries taking more aggressive / decisive actions? So I'm going to just briefly set this up, and I'm sure Patrick, you can go on further, and I'm sure other speakers may want to raise their hands on this one. But just as an example, right now, this war is contained to three nations roughly. The country of Belarus and Russia, which is where the Russian troops are advancing in from, and then the nation of Ukraine, where the battle is being fought for the most part. So right now, there's only three nations at war. If NATO or other nations were to start getting involved, now you're talking about potentially seeing activities, even if it was just a conventional war, all the way from Nordkap in Norway down to as far as the Mediterranean and Turkey. So definitely start bringing in a much larger area of operations. You start putting at risk places like the Baltic states, which can then be potentially cut off by having troops go from the Belarus frontier to the Russian Kaliningrad exclave, which is nestled right up against Poland, and that could split the Baltic states from Poland, and that area specifically is known as the Suwalki Gap. Many NATO analysts have been studying the defense of that area for many years. So just that alone gives you an idea of the kind of risks that come with even trying to send any sort of support. And Vladimir Putin is betting that NATO won't want to escalate to that degree. But again, Patrick, if you want to weigh in, or any of the other speakers would like to talk about like why there's such reticence to get involved, that'd be great.
Well, unfortunately, NATO has, and the West, I don't want to necessarily hit NATO's dedicated bureaucrats too hard on this, though they share culpability. NATO has not been good about thinking proactively about this. I've been hammering this for 3 months now. NATO has not been forward thinking about what can you do to deter Vladimir Putin from invading, and now they're not being proactive about what can we do to hurt him now that he's in there. It's just not in their mindset. They are reactive. They are bureaucrats. They're not thinking this through. As far as the Suwalki Gap, I don't see that necessarily as a huge risk factor, because that would mean an overt military push against NATO. That's the last thing he wants. All the expensive soft target crap that he's stuffed Kaliningrad full of is within tubed artillery range of NATO batteries. That's gonna be the most expensive Kessel in modern human military history. We would destroy massive amounts of equipment that he's just never going to get to replace. But as far as, and a lot of it is the leading voices for intervention are saying stupid things like a no-fly zone over Ukraine. And we've discussed this at least twice in these spaces since we've started holding them, since the invasion started. And I'm tired of beating around the bush about it. This is stupid. You're going to put NATO pilots up against Russian pilots in Ukrainian airspace. One of them will pull the trigger. It's going to be somebody. Because keep in mind, NATO, portions of it, the Poles, the Romanians, the Bulgarians, the Slovakians, they all mount the same airframes Ukraine does. Target identification is going to be a problem for Russian pilots. They may think they're shooting at a Ukrainian MiG. It's actually a Polish MiG, or a Romanian MiG, or a Bulgarian MiG. And we will fire back. And then you have dead NATO troops killed by Russians. That escalates real quick, because the Poles, for one, are not going to take that lying down. They're in no mood to. They will invoke Article 5 in a heartbeat, because that is their dead service personnel on a NATO mission. They have every right to, and then NATO is either bound to agree to Article 5, or Poland, NATO might break up, frankly. Things are that precarious. It is a dumb idea. That's why if we do this, we have to relearn Cold War doctrine of proxy war, which everyone seems to have memory hold. You fight indirectly. You always fight indirectly, because that way, if you kill Russians or if they kill you, it's deniable. Nobody has to admit to it. And we can all pretend it didn't happen so that things don't have to escalate. It's the same thing that happened in Syria when Trump bombed the hell out of those Wagner Group mercenaries at Kashim in 2018. The Russians never acknowledged it. They never acknowledged it happened for this exact reason. Putin understands how this game is played. He understands that when you kill each other, no one can admit to it, because then if you admit to it, you have to do something about it.
All right, and Yehuda is a new speaker to the stage. So Yehuda, why don't you introduce yourself and then state what brought you to our stage here tonight?
Well, hi there, and thank you for having me. Radio check though can you hear me? Am I good?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Yeah, no, it's a very interesting conversation, and I commend everyone here. It's moderated very nicely. So I'll say I'm a field grade officer from a NATO country, not to get into too many details, and trained Ukrainian forces on a rotation recently. I will say, I mean, to answer Patrick, or to add to Patrick's comments, I mean, if people are asking why is NATO not doing more, the simple answer is they can't. If it gets escalated to, there was an argument that was had that Putin was rational, from a military perspective, and a brigade group planning considerations. If you take them into consideration, I mean, even his initial four-pronged attack, if you count the separatists in the Donbass, very strange. The CSS logistics considerations, combat support for people who not sure what that means. It means you have to have an A1, A2, and a B echelon in the back. It really lends credence to the belief that Putin has been advised that they're going to waltz right into Ukraine to flowers and red carpets, because it's not a sound military decision. Often the most simplest plan is the best one. This is a really complicated plan. So what's stopping Biden from doing more? And that is it getting out of control. People are now talking not just about the Ukraine. They're saying, well, we're not going to risk a nuclear war for Ukraine. Would we risk one for Estonia, their members, or Lithuania, where it's the weakest? The Baltic states are the weakest in Lithuania in the sense that Russia surrounds them in a lot of sides. So it's not a matter of desire, if that's kind of what the implication was by one of the other listeners. It's really a matter of practicality. I know, without getting into specifics, that the resup for the Ukrainians is and as Patrick very accurately pointed out, nothing stops Ukrainian troops from ARVing and ARV, what do you call it, from setting up a collection point in a neighboring country and resupplying. But I did want to say this in the overall comment, and I'll stop. I think, from what I know of the forces I worked with, I'm shocked in a great way. Their combat effectiveness has really been harnessed, and doing what they did with Kiev. Someone made a comment once. Well, why did they split? It looks like they're going to end up splitting the country. The best chance they have right now is having Kiev as a redoubt. The Russians would incur incredible losses, more losses to their own forces trying to take Kiev, very dense city. It's packed with javelins and laws, and the reality is, unless Putin really wants to kill a lot of people, the Russians are going to be very, very bogged down. Very hard to do a penetration into a city like Kiev and not sustain ridiculous amounts of casualties. So that's my experience, and I'm proud of the guys I worked with. I'm very proud. They're doing an amazing job under the worst conditions possible. Unfortunately, all the West can do now is offer resupply, and I think Germany is going to now take the restraints off their armaments and the capability. So that's yeah.
Do y'all mind if I take this question too?
Please go ahead. First, introduce yourself and let us know what you'd like to say.
Sure. My name is Dean Kirby. I have over a decade of experience with a variety of military conflict situations and geopolitical issues and things in Europe and Middle East. I've been very familiar with using Twitter and social media as a resource for tracking conflicts and everything going on and assisting folks in need in combat zones. So just really appreciate what you guys are doing. To the question about why the NATO and United States and European Union countries have not or are not doing more and taking more steps to deter Russia's invasion of Ukraine. I think part of the biggest issue is about their own combat readiness and their own lack of confidence, I would say, in the Ukrainian military initially. A lot of the reports that we saw or even just heard about anecdotally were that there was not a lot of certainty that Ukraine would put up a consistent and reliable defense. In fact, it seems that even Russia was, when they were evaluating a decision to go in here, that they were not even thinking that. So I don't know that the NATO and U.S. led coalition was really prepared for what it would look like to support a long-term, real Ukrainian defense, not just a guerrilla movement or some type of militia, insurgency, but an actual strategic defense of, key cities and
Hey,
key
one
points.
second.
So, I
One
think
second.
a lot of it is I don't know that they thought that it would go this way, and now they're not
Yeah,
really sure what to do. And different countries obviously have different opinions on that. I think the Baltic countries and Poland and others seem more eager to do more to help, whereas some of the Western European countries have been a little bit more reticent.
I'd like to just add to what you're saying. The
Hey, can I
reason
cut
why
in
we've been
real quick?
hold on.
Patrick,
Could
can
you
you
could
check
you
your
hold on for
messages,
just
please?
1 minute? For just 1 minute, and then I'll let you report. So the one thing I was going to mention is the fact that in Syria, we saw equipment being delivered to rebel units to fight against the Syrian military, and that turned out to be captured. The same thing happened in Afghanistan, and of course, there's always the old story of the Stinger missiles, falling into the hands of the Mujahideen and the fears of them being used against Western aircraft. So yes, I agree with you 100% that there was a general reticence about what happens if we give materiel to Ukraine that would then fall to Russia or fall out of Allied hands. So I think that's a good point. Okay, now go ahead. Sorry about that.
I need Patrick or someone. Well, who's good at identifying vehicles?
I am.
Who is that? Because my phone is like totally wigging out on stage.
Wolverine.
Wolverines. Okay, I will send you the pictures real quick.
Yeah, I used to be in a anti-armor platoon, so we had to do that kind of fun stuff.
Gotta love anti-armor. It's my favorite asset.
All right, 1 second. I'm gonna send you a message.
And then just to a point that someone else made, I would say that the Ukrainian army I trained Ukrainian officers in 2011 and 12, and on just what we'd call trade qualification courses, infantry, and I was very unimpressed. But going back 8 years later, 7 years later, it is a different, very highly motivated, and they've taken on the lessons when it's American or British or Canadian cadre. They're very good at it because they see that it's they're living next to the bear, I guess, right? So they have it. So I would respectfully disagree with the previous speaker that the Americans or whatnot might not have thought highly of the Ukrainian forces. That was true once upon a time, but now that's not the case, and the proof is in the pudding. I mean, the damage inflicted. I think that one question anyone in the military, like maybe Patrick, the one thing I see is when I see the videos of tanks going in single files down MSRs, main service routes, and they're not doing defile drills over bridges. In other words, they're not doing the things that professional soldiers do when they encounter obstacles. It's just bizarre to me, and I'm wondering. I know after action reports from not just Donbass, Crimea, but from Abkhazia and South Ossetia with the Georgians. The Russians said, "Oh, we did this and this wrong. Let's focus on more conventional the next time we do it." Why didn't they put their best foot forward? Why did they clumsily fall into Ukraine like that? I don't know what Patrick has to say. I'd be curious. Thank you.
Yeah, Yehuda, we've been discussing that kind of off and on all day. A lot of basic stuff they're just not doing. There's no route security that we can see. We're seeing pretty good on-the-ground video of supply and support columns getting shot up. When we see these pictures of burned out tanks and destroyed BMPs, what you're not seeing is a whole lot of dead infantry around them, which means their guys probably either fled or didn't dismount and left the armor to get schwacked.
I heard a lot of them aren't dismounting. That's something I did, but that's just a rumor. That's something curious.
That's what I'm seeing from the video that we've been able to get a hold of so far. I think this is a lack of training. It's a lack of good NCOs and officers at the platoon, the company, even the battalion level.
Yeah, it's bizarre. It's really bizarre. Especially, I'm trying to think of like their axes of advance. There's 3 or 4. I'm loath to say 4 because I don't know what the 4th one in the Donbass, if that's comprised of irregulars from the so-called independent states there, or is that an actual? Do you have any insight on that actually?
Well, we've got one coming down from Belarus. We've got one coming down from the east side of the Dnieper. We've got one that's hung up in Kharkov, and then we've got one that's coming out of Crimea. So there actually are 4. There's 5.
So, but that was my question. The one in the southeast, the one coming from Crimea. I'm wondering who. I didn't understand. I kind of heard mixed reports that there was a lot of irregular forces on Crimea and the Donbass pushing up against the line of control.
There may be some irregulars, but that's 58th Combined Arms Army.
Right.
That's a standing force.
Right. Okay. Yeah. No, it's sloppy. It's definitely feel like staff college. First year, like 101 staff college. Battle group and brigade group. Planning command, and it's just very bizarre to me. So I don't know why they didn't, put their best. The only thing I can think of is they thought they'd just fly into the environs of Kiev, paratroop a whole bunch of paratroopers in, capture Zelensky, force him to sign some kind of document or something, and that's the only explanation, because it's such a poorly executed, and it seems to be a very poorly planned attack. I don't know if you get that vibe, but that's just a general feeling I get.
Oh yeah, I mean every part of it. You've got what basically amounts to self-imposed strategic dispersal. These assault groups are not meeting their objectives. They're not encircling large groups of Ukrainian leg infantry, as I greatly feared that they would. We're not seeing good combined arms operations. There's no close cover for these columns. We're seeing attack helicopters, which we usually use for that purpose, being dispersed to try to cover these opposed airborne landings without destroying Ukrainian air defenses. I mean, this is a mess.
Yeah, that's for the air mobile. The tactics for the air, either they're so desperate or they just don't care about their own troops, because to send books are still flying around out there, and they're just going at just crazy. I'm surprised more of the attack helicopters didn't get shot down. But,
well, I mean, we just saw 2 IL-76s, probably full of paratroops, get splashed over Kiev.
So I happen to have heard that there was about 20 Aleutians, they're ILs, and that's 2 battalions of paratroopers, right? So,
yeah, ballpark, about a company or in change each.
Company and change each, so it's about 2,000, or just over, and then assuming that they've got support and some kind of integral support in that unit that they're dropping. So let's say 2,000 paratroopers. It's just a really pie in the sky weird plan.
And it's a waste of their best units, which is what gets me.
It's a huge waste of highly trained soldiers. Bizarre, especially with the air defense not even remotely completely knocked out, not even close.
Yeah,
I mean, they're still using the plane. It's very weird.
Yeah.
Right, and we also mentioned the fact that they were deployed to places that ground forces, armor or infantry, could not reach them in time. So they were totally isolated, and as soon as their small arms would run out, unit cohesion would just be, plummet.
Yeah, and it could have been lessons learned from their experience in Crimea, where they just walked over the Ukrainian army there, so they might have just thought that they didn't have to do anything. But it is, from a military perspective, it is really shocking to me that it's the craziest execution and planning of an attack. I can't even imagine it.
Right, and for newcomers to the space, maybe this is their first night here, and we were just talking about lethal aid to Ukraine. So I wanted to go back to Crimea, because that was the point at which the United States first began providing lethal aid to Ukraine. So, but even though 2014 is when we began to agree to do it, it took until 2017 before javelins were permitted to be sold to Ukraine. And then it wasn't until this last week that Stingers were authorized by the Department of State to be transferred to Ukraine. So even though we've, in theory, been supporting them, a lot of it was just small arms, and there was a lot of waffling about granting them access to some of the more advanced weaponry. Also, just this month, they turned down any sort of agreement to transfer over, let's say, Patriot or other high-altitude air defense systems. So, and also Israel refused to sell them Iron Dome systems. So it's even though we are supporting some lethal aid, it's very much a please mother may I kind of situation.
I think that first of all, with the Israel thing, I mean, they can't sell the Iron Dome without State Department approval anyway. But so if the State Department's not going to do it, they're not going to do it. But I mean, it all comes down to what can be perceived as a provocation on behalf of NATO. So Putin's angle, and a lot of people in NATO have tried to, assuage his concerns and say we're not going to do this or that. So it's really an issue of not trust. It's not trusting the Ukrainians that they'll fall apart and sell them on the black market and bring down the commercial airliner. I don't think that is really a major concern. It's the question is how are you going to antagonize it? But I think the gloves are off on that in that regard, and there will be a steady stream of those particular type of anti-armor weapons and air defense weapons. That will come into play. I don't know. I mean, I see Patrick's Air Force. I'm not, so I don't want to speak to the air defense capabilities.
Fair enough.
But yeah, like I can tell you from the anti-armor perspective, the amount of javelins and, very portable. You only need a section. What do you guys call sections? What do you call sections, Patrick? Squads?
What's
No.
I was an anomaly. I was an air base defense guy, so I was
cool.
I was light infantry in a flyboy's world.
Typically in the Army, javelins, it's 2 per rifle platoon, so they'll be in what they call the weapons squad. So a light infantry platoon, a light infantry company would have 6 javelin clues, and that they would carry probably, they'd probably carry 2 rockets, 2 missiles per team. The Marine Corps runs them a little bit differently. They run what they call CAT, combined armor anti-armor teams. Sorry. Running tows, and then they'll throw in the javelins there as well, since they are more portable than the tow missiles.
Yeah, so we followed NATO doctrine just like when we're there, and what we would have, like the anti-armor platoon would be, about 15 vehicles, and probably, I'm trying to think. It's about the same. Just we split it up a little differently in Canada.
Well, and the other thing that is because, on the heavy vehicles, like the LAVs, they're running twin tow launchers, and there's only, I think there's 2 of those per a LAV company. And then you've got the Bradleys that, you run a mech platoon, then they run, each vehicle has 2 tow missiles on it, and it can be reloaded. And depending on the variant, if it's an M2 or an M3, kind of determines how many reloads that particular vehicle has. But you also got to look at our tank, the tank units. The tank units will have, they call them scouts, but they're anti-armor teams, drive around in Humvees or something like that, with tow missiles and javelins as well. So, and now they're actually also adding the Carl Gustavs to the inventory for the Army, to include the National Guard, and to the Marine Corps. And the Carl Gustavs, they'll pretty much take out anything from a BMP-3 down, with a range of about 1,000 meters. And everything I've heard, they're actually making new warheads for them. But the Carl Gustavs are also a big game changer for the infantry side.
Yeah, that's our main weapon in our platoons for that task. So I guess my point of bringing it up is that we can all pretty much assume, or I can say I know for a fact, that the Ukrainians are going to be very disproportionately heavy on anti-armor munitions and personnel. So it's triple at least what normal.
Well, they're actually running a lot of anyways, because they actually pulled a lot of their MT-12s or T-12s out of storage and actually refurbished them. MT-12s is basically, it's a 100 millimeter anti-tank gun, and then I don't remember the designation for it, but they also have the 125 millimeter anti-tank gun. Then they'll have AT-4s, the AT-5s, and the AT-6s for anti-armor assets as well. Plus, they've got just like every other foreign country, foreign Soviet republic, they'll probably have like millions of RPG-7s, which are just as effective against any thin-skinned vehicles to include up to the BMP-1 and BMP-2s, and obviously all the BTRs variants. So that right there is, I mean,
Yeah.
some people say the RPG is underrated. I think a lot of people underrate the RPG and what it actually can do, because the RPG it's like the perfect mix. It has a lot of types of munitions, and it's very light and very portable, and it's just about as easy to use as an AK-47.
Very underrated, for sure.
Okay, so we have a couple of other hands raised. I just want to do again a kind of a redo of the ground rules for everybody who's listening. We have a lot of folks in this Twitter space tonight. First of all, if you want to share something with us and it's just a retweet of something that you're seeing, please don't just DM it to me, because that might take me up to an hour to respond. We have a lot of stuff that's going on. So if it's just a retweet of something public, something that's already on Twitter, just hit up Patrick or myself with a public tag on it. If there is a private communication, again, we want to respect the survivability of anybody who's giving us privileged information. So if you just want to give us a private message, please do so for your own safety. But again, if it's just something that you're retweeting because you've seen on Twitter, that's totally fine to just, again, we're talking about OS, OS int here. So just feel free to just tag us of a public tweet. Another thing I wanted to go over is, again, we're not going to be speculating too much as far as, like, especially politics or where we're going to be in a month, never mind a year. So again, try and keep your questions as to what's going on now, and we'll try and answer as factually as possible. Grammer, you've had your hand up for a while, so I'm going to let you speak now.
I didn't realize it was still up. My bad.
Okay, so EB, you're welcome to the space. Please introduce yourself, let people know what brought you here, and then share the information you'd like to share.
Hello, my name's Ed, and I'm from the Baltic States. I've been following one of the Telegram, basically chats, I would say, but it's not a chat, it's just basically a space where media putting out their news, and it's in Russian, but like most of the news which have been seen on Twitter, I've seen there faster than they've been on Twitter. So right now, I just saw that in Ukraine, the bridge which is nearby the Victory Square was blown up, and also basically just now Ukrainian land forces posted that they have repulsed the Russian attack, which is good news. And basically, I was here because I get quite a lot of info the last 2 hours, and I'm just willing to share it as fast as I can.
Yeah, I had the same report that attack up at that avenue from the west was repulsed. But again, if you can share, tag me on anything you can, maybe screenshot something from Telegram, put it into a tweet, and then just tag me, because I want to have corroboration on stuff.
Yes.
I really am loath to just spread around things that are based on hearsay. So any type of citation you can give helps bolster trust in information. So thank you.
I will send you screenshots. The only problem is that it's in Russian, but
that's okay. There's some people here that understand
I
that.
will send screenshots. I will most probably post them on my page. My account is locked, so I will just try to send to the hosts and co-hosts over here the information, especially Walter, as I believe he might be speaking Russian as well. And
fair enough then.
And I will be sending as much info as I can.
Sure. So again, before you disappear from the space, if anybody wants to follow EB, just check out his profile, and let's make sure that people stay in touch. Let's see, Enclave, I believe you had your hand up just a little bit before Visionary, so why don't you go next?
I just wanted to say that I've received some questions, and some of these questions are the kind of questions I can instantly reply, so you can send them my way.
Fair enough. Okay, Visionary, what did you have to add?
Yeah, basically just coming back around to the point, if anybody has any videos, any pictures, anything like that, please avoid sending me any videos or pictures of casualties on either side. But any attacks or any locations of Russian troops, either confirmed or unconfirmed, please send it to me so that way I can continue doing some geolocating work.
Fair enough. Okay, and because this is an OS Int channel, I want to provide to people some advice. First of all, there is a new feature, began in December of last year, that allows you to click on the three little buttons in the lower right corner when you are posting an image. And if you go into that feature, there's a way of actually flagging. You can flag one time when you're posting. So for this tweet, I'm going to post this with a content warning. So this is not Twitter slapping on a content warning; it's you slapping on a content warning. And think about this, especially if you're resharing an image that may be, it may have some traumatic effects, may be psychologically disturbing. So make sure that you use the content warning flag on anything that you yourself are retweeting. In addition, the other thing that happens is that Twitter has kind of like an anti-violence sort of term of service. And so oftentimes what'll happen is maybe a day, week, maybe a month later, people can report tweets that include violent content. Now, some of this may be important information, like you may be cataloging, for instance, the effect of ATGMs on armory units, or you may be trying to like geolocate areas where violence happened, maybe a war crime, something like that. If there are any videos that you think are really important to the kind of research that you personally are doing, or you think that other people may want to do, consider using a tool to download video to some sort of local storage system. Because I know that in Syria, a lot of these things eventually, for instance, were mass reported. And then a lot of videos documenting war crimes, documenting all sorts of events of the Syrian war were memory hold. These things never happened, right? So if this is the kind of thing that you want to do, make sure that your primary research just doesn't go away.